I'm not that strong. This is a mistake. A hiccup. A bad dream. I'm not like them. I'm not that strong. They were my own words. Words I had committed to paper being repeated back to me 2 days after they had been performed on stage. 2 days after they had been published online. Though I had recorded them as part of my thoughts as a freshly anointed rough sleeper, I had never actually heard them expressed by anyone else. Until that day. I had been regularly volunteering with the Connection shortly after I had been signed into their books. It was a good way to gain favor, a good way to earn meal tickets, and a good way to learn the ins and outs of the system. Part of my duties included signing in new clients, gathering their basic information and the main reason behind their homelessness. Sometimes they were shell-shocked, sometimes they were agitated, sometimes they were cynical, familiar with the system and impatient to get the paperwork completed quickly so they could head downstairs for a shower and a meal. But never had anyone expressed the same thoughts and feelings I had, particularly as direct quotations of the very words I had penned. And each time I was quoted, the waterworks would commence loud, fierce, and brief, the tears drying as quickly as they had started, only to reappear when my words passed his lips again. I was puzzled at first, then suspicious. I considered the possibility he was having a quiet laugh at my sensitivity, something I was regularly teased for, sometimes affectionately, sometimes not, by the friends I had made since entering the street life. But I had never seen him before, not even in a peripheral sense. Homelessness may be a global issue affecting tens of thousands, but the numbers surrounding each shelter are generally quite small, and they often form a temporary, occasionally tight-knit community. At the very least, they learn to recognize each other on sight even if they don't engage with each other. This was the first time I had seen this gentleman and, interestingly, the last. Once his sign-in process was complete he vanished, never to be seen again, not even in Trafalgar Square or Charing Cross where the bulk of the Connection's clients spent their days drinking, begging, stealing, and fighting. After he left, one of the staff came rushing to the table in a frenzy of exuberance. She had overheard the conversation, of course. I had learned by that point the staff overhear, or learn of, every conversation, no matter how private. She overbubblingly pointed out he had used the very same words I had written. It was proof of the power of my writing, and I could use that skill to do a lot of good for other homeless people. And wasn't it wonderful the Connection had helped me discover that talent? They could help me use my skills to help others. Setting aside the fact my previous career in journalism had already provided me with a slight inkling I might have a flair for the English language. I was a good hack writer at the very least. The entire exchange felt off somehow. It was the first time I felt a chance encounter on charity premises was manufactured, a little real-life theatrical presentation staged for my benefit. The first time, but not the last. I also considered the troubling possibility I was starting to grow paranoid. My trust in the people I had turned to for help was rapidly diminishing. It isn't much of a leap from distrust to paranoia, and I worried I might be in the early stages of making that jump. Until that point, any issues that had arisen with the staff were matters of, in their words, misunderstandings. Whether those misunderstandings were the result of misinterpretation on my part or miscommunication on theirs was open to debate. It was a concern, but one I quickly put aside as I was still hoping my theatrical debut would lead to legitimate offers of employment that would provide the stable income one needed to return to my previous flat. Those offers had yet to reach my ears. The Connection had asked me to sign an agreement stating all inquiries resulting from the performance or the publication passed through them. They fell just short of being insistent, but offered friendly nudges to encourage my agreement. They claimed they were more skilled in dealing with the media than I and only wanted to protect me. I reminded them newsprint ran in my blood, being a third-generation journalist myself, and was more than comfortable dealing with these matters. They smiled their polite, duly noted smiles, and argued I was too vulnerable to make these decisions myself, and again, their only concern was to protect me. It was ridiculous, however I had no choice but to agree as my mobile phone had been stolen from the center just a few days previously. I had no other way to be contacted. Beggars can't be choosers. They can only sit back and let others choose for them. I signed the relevant paperwork and they promised to let me know of any job offers that came to their attention. Much to the dismay of my ego, only one opportunity came knocking. My pedestal of literary and theatrical glory came crashing down like the house of cards it truly was. It appeared no one outside the world of homelessness itself was interested. Chastening myself for again allowing my dreams to supersede my station in life, I was grateful at least one person had expressed curiosity. Months later I discovered more interest had been shown than the staff at the Connection had revealed, and more people had tried to connect with me. Those options were never brought to my attention, even when I asked. Whether that was in my best interest or the Connection's is open to interpretation. The day of the interview arrived, and I met with a representative of Rogers, Coleridge and White, a literary agency based in London. It came up early in the conversation he was good friends with employees at the Connection, and was heavily involved with the No Second Night Out initiative that had left a sour taste in my mouth when I first landed in the streets. When I mentioned the flaw in their name based on my experience of 8 attempts, he informed me it was a common misinterpretation. No Second Night Out is meant as a goal to strive for, not a promise. I was still hopeful a job was within my grasp, so shared in the chuckle over my silly common misinterpretation through gritted teeth. After praising my abilities as a writer, he offered to act as my agent. He saw my role as a champion for homeless charities, naturally starting with the Connection and No Second Night Out. He would assign stories he would later submit to the newspapers he saw fit or allow the charities to use the articles themselves if the media expressed no interest. When I asked if I had the freedom to criticize the charities, I was starting to develop a few, he gushingly agreed, but under the caveat he would have complete editorial control over the final copy and rewrite any problematic areas as he saw fit. I also told him I knew from my own experience as a magazine editor I didn't need an agent to make newspaper submissions, that as a general rule of thumb those were the first submissions I rejected unread. He responded with the same polite, stone-faced smile I was getting used to seeing on a regular basis at the Connection. Duly noted. We then discussed A Night in the Slums, and I presented the general outline, a biography of Sir John Kirk's life and an analysis of social conditions at the time. He suggested I drop the biography aspect, focus on the social conditions of Victorian London, and compare them to conditions today to promote the good work the charities do, and show the progress that had been made. By the charities, of course. Personally, I was starting to question just how much progress had been made, but kept that thought to myself. I again requested the freedom to criticize the charity's work, and he suddenly announced we would co-write the book together, so he could keep me on track and ensure it was written responsibly. That was a step too intrusive. I wasn't about to let a man who was eroding my trust so quickly have editorial control over my family's life. When I asked about the pay scale, he didn't provide specific figures, simply stated it was too complicated to go into at the moment and not to worry. Another standard response I was getting used to at the Connection. He then reminded me with his winningest smile that all payments would be subject to his agency fees and co-writing credits. I wanted to laugh in his face, but I was heartbroken. Meetings with agents do not come easily. Though I knew from experience the conditions he was proposing would have resulted in professional suicide, I was frantically trying to find some way to accept. I requested time to think about it, but ultimately turned him down. I was devastated. Another avenue of hope had been unceremoniously closed. The staff of the Connection were not pleased. My halcyon days of nudges were over.